The Civil War Veterans Museum is housed in one of the last remaining Grand Army of the Republic memorial halls in the state. The GAR Memorial Hall was built in 1894 as a meeting place for veterans of the Union Army, but since its restoration and conversion to a museum, it contains artifacts and exhibits that feature both sides of the conflict, dedicating it to the memory of both Union and Confederate veterans. The exhibited items include weapons, uniforms, art, medals, and trinkets from the Civil War era. The museum hosts demonstrations by the Living History Corps that include reenactments and hands-on activities. Younger visitors to the museum can also try on Civil War uniforms, which have been tailored to scale. The GAR Memorial Hall is now being maintained so that it may be once again used as a meeting place, research library, and historical museum. The Craigle Windmill Factory Museum is housed in the last intact historic windmill factory in the United States. The Craigle Windmill Company operated out of this factory from the time it was built in 1903 to Art Craigle's death in 1991. In total, the business ran for 112 years on Central Avenue here in Nebraska City. The museum opened on April 26, 2013, after an extensive 2-year renovation. The main gallery is designed in such a way that visitors can walk through the Craigle Windmill Company factory and see it in an untouched state, appearing as though the workers simply left for lunch and never returned. The museum features 7 interactive video kiosks that guide visitors through the gallery. Like many of the museums in Nebraska City, the Craigle Windmill Factory Museum is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Mayhew Cabin in John Brown's Cave is Nebraska's first nationally recognized Underground Railroad historic site. The cabin was the home of Alan and Barbara Mayhew, formerly Barbara Kagi, and had become a stop on the Underground Railroad utilized by Barbara's brother, John Henry Kagi. Kagi had lived in the cabin for over a year before moving to Kansas and becoming involved with John Brown, the famous abolitionist. Kagi would later take part in the attempted seizure of the United States Federal Arsenal at Harper's Ferry, where he was shot to death during the raid in 1859. The museum houses a collection of artifacts from the slavery era, as well as various displays highlighting the buildup and explosion of abolitionism in the 1850s. There's also a small replica village behind the museum and cabin, which features a train depot, school, and church. Sitting just outside Nebraska City on a 79-acre bluff overlooking the Missouri River is the Missouri River Basin Lewis and Clark Visitor Center. This 12,000 square foot facility is dedicated to the study and interpretation of the amazing scientific discoveries made by William Clark and Meriwether Lewis on their historic expedition to the Pacific Ocean. The center features interactive exhibits, full-scale replicas of the keelboat and pirogue used by the Corps of Discovery, and a Plains Indian Earth Lodge. The grounds also feature beautiful observation trails that overlook the Missouri River, allowing visitors to see for themselves sights similar to what the captains would have witnessed over 200 years ago. The Nebraska City Museum of Firefighting is dedicated to the preservation and interpretation of Nebraska's oldest volunteer fire department, dating from the formation of the 1st Bucket Brigade in 1856. The collection is comprised of artifacts which were actually used throughout the years by Nebraska City Volunteer Fire Department. Some of the exhibited items include an 1884 Button steam engine used to pump water from the Missouri River, 1926 and 1938 Seagrave pumper trucks, and many hands-on displays. Kids visiting the museum will have fun dressing up in firefighting gear and playing on the 1966 American LaFrance fire truck. There is certainly something here for every age group. The Taylor Wessel Bickle Nelson House is a museum inside an 1857 brick home, which sits on one of the historic brick streets just a couple blocks off Central Avenue in Nebraska City. The exhibits within this house from Nebraska's territorial era show how the town of Nebraska City has changed and evolved over the years, seen through the eyes of the different families that live there. Visitors will watch the town's buildings and streets grow from dirt to pavement, from oxen to the first automobiles. See opera houses, racetracks, churches, and mansions rise up from the Nebraska prairie. This community's history is surprising, captivating, and endearing. Housed in the home office of the Russell, Majors, and Waddell Freighting Company, this museum's mission is focused on interpreting the significance of the freighting and shipping industry in the development of Nebraska City. Russell, Majors, and Waddell, more widely known for their later business venture, the Pony Express, spent around $300,000 in 1859 to turn Nebraska City into a shipping port for their company. Russell, Majors, and Waddell was the largest shipping firm in the Great Plains at the time, and they reportedly reached their peak in 1865, moving 44 million pounds of freight that year. The exhibits in this museum demonstrate not only the history of the shipping firm, but also the history of westward movement along the Oregon, California, and Mormon trails. One exhibit houses the last remaining piece of the steam wagon, which is one small part of an interesting and humorous anecdote from the early years of Nebraska City. The Otoe County Museum of Memories in Syracuse consists of 3 buildings at 366 Poplar Street. A variety of historical attractions and exhibitions are available at the museum. The main building is the former First Lutheran Church, which was dedicated in 1881. The church, built for $1,500, was a daughter church of First Lutheran Church, North Branch, near Avoca. The church has been divided into 5 display rooms, an old-time butcher shop, a carriage room with a sleigh, a country store made from cottonwood logs, a loom room, which also includes a section of the 1912 Syracuse telephone switchboard, and a doctor's office. The parsonage next door features vintage furnishing displays and exhibits on Otoe County military history and businesses. A small building next to the parsonage now houses a display of wildlife specimens with interactive exhibits related to nature science. The River Country Nature Center houses the life's work of Nebraska City taxidermist Joe Voges. There are over 400 specimens of wildlife native to Nebraska on display, as well as many exotic species from around the world. The center features interactive exhibits related to natural science, wildlife biology, conservation, archaeology, and paleontology. The center's main gallery is divided into 4 major environmental areas: eastern deciduous, riparian, grasslands, and sandhills. Along with the displays of interactive exhibits, the center also contains a library of reference materials on the fauna of Nebraska and a classroom where they hold various educational programs. Built in 1869, the 10-room Gothic-style Wildwood House brings to life the Victorian era in early Nebraska. The house is furnished as it would have been during the time that Jasper and Ellen Ware would have lived here amidst the wildwood in western Nebraska City. Guests are able to step into the lives of a Victorian-era family and see the way they lived their daily lives. Also on display at Wildwood Historic Center is a showcase of regional arts and crafts. During the month of October, the house is decorated for a Victorian-style Christmas with musicians playing carols on the original Steinway piano in the parlor. Docents at Wildwood Historic Center give enthralling guided tours while dressed in period clothing, often not replicas. Also on the grounds of Wildwood Historic Center is the Victorian Garden nestled at the back of the property, which guests are invited to enjoy year-round.